Eddie's just small.
Funny. You never said that when you needed help.
The bathroom door was cracked just enough for me to hear Rachel giggling like a teenager on her phone at 2 a.m. Eddie Harlan, that's me, 43 years old, hands permanently stained with motor oil, sleeping alone while my wife whispered sweet nothings to someone who wasn't her husband. I'd been lying there for 20 minutes, staring at the water stain on our bedroom ceiling that looked like a broken heart. How's that for irony? Rachel's purse sat on the nightstand, her wedding ring beside it. She'd been taking it off more and more lately. It gets in the way at work, she'd said. Right. Because typing emails was such dangerous business. The giggling stopped. Water ran. I heard her padding back to bed in those ridiculous fuzzy slippers her sister Vivian had given her last Christmas. Rachel slipped under the covers, her back to me, and within minutes she was breathing the deep, satisfied breaths of someone without a guilty conscience. But I had one now. Because while she was in the bathroom playing teenage girl, I'd done something I never thought I'd do. I'd slipped a tiny voice recorder, the kind I used for work notes when my hands were too dirty to write, into the side pocket of her purse. Eddie Harlan, small-town mechanic, reduced to spying on his own wife. My father would have been ashamed. My mother would have told me to grow a backbone and ask her straight out. But I already knew what Rachel would say. She'd gotten good at making me feel crazy for noticing things. The next morning, Rachel was up before me, showering and humming some song I didn't recognize. She came out wrapped in a towel, her dark hair dripping, and for a second she looked like the woman I'd married 15 years ago. Then she saw me watching her, and the mask slipped back on. "Morning," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Morning? You were up late last night?" "Was I?" She pulled clothes from the dresser with sharp, efficient movements. "Must have been reading. You know how I get with those romance novels." "Romance novels, sure. I checked her Kindle last week. She hadn't opened a book in months." "I was thinking we could do something today," I said. "It's Saturday. Maybe drive up to Bar Harbor, get some lobster rolls like we used to." Rachel paused, a blouse halfway over her head. When her face emerged, she looked genuinely annoyed. "I can't. I'm meeting the girls for brunch. Steph's going through a rough patch with her divorce. Steph Morrison, recently divorced and apparently determined to drag every married woman in town down with her. Along with Nora Chen and Candace Williams, they formed what I'd started thinking of as the Bitter Wives Club. All three had been through messy divorces in the past 2 years, and now they spent their time at the Lakeview Country Club, drinking mimosas and complaining about men. "What about tonight?" I tried. "Book club." "Tomorrow?" "Eddie." Rachel's voice had that edge it got when she was about to tell me I was being unreasonable. "I have a life outside this house. I can't just drop everything because you suddenly want to play husband." Play husband? Like 15 years of marriage was some kind of game I'd been half-assing. She grabbed her purse, the one with my recorder inside, and kissed my cheek. Her lips were cold. "I'll be back this afternoon. Maybe we can watch a movie or something." After she left, I sat at our kitchen table, drinking coffee that tasted like regret, and staring at my phone. The recorder had a companion app. All I had to do was open it. Some lines, once you cross them, you can never uncross. But I'd been living in limbo for months, watching my wife slip away piece by piece. I needed to know. I opened the app. The first hour was boring stuff. Rachel ordering coffee, chatting with the hostess at the country club, the usual small talk with her friends. I was starting to feel guilty for doubting her when Steph's voice cut through the background noise like a knife. "So, have you told Eddie yet?" My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. "Told him what?" Rachel's voice, but different, lighter. Happier than she'd sounded at home in months. "About Liam, obviously. Girl, you've been glowing for weeks. It's time to stop pretending." Liam. Liam Barrett, who owned the new gym downtown. I'd met him exactly once, when Rachel had insisted I try a couple's workout session. Tall, tanned, the kind of guy who called everyone buddy and had never worked a real job in his life. Rachel had been different that day, laughing too much, touching her hair, acting like a woman instead of the business-focused stranger who shared my bed. "It's complicated," Rachel said, and I could hear her smiling. "Eddie's been so, I don't know, needy lately, clingy. It's suffocating." Needy, for wanting to spend time with my own wife. "Honey," Nora's voice now, "you're 38 years old. You deserve to be happy. Look what happened to me, 20 years with David, and for what? So he could leave me for his secretary anyway?" "At least David left," Candace added. "Some men just drag it out forever. They're comfortable. They don't want to rock the boat." "Eddie's not a bad guy," Rachel said, but her tone suggested otherwise. He's just small town, small dreams, small life. When I'm with Liam, I feel like I could be anyone, do anything. Small. 15 years of marriage reduced to one word. So, take off the ring, Steph said. Stop pretending. Liam's crazy about you and you're wasting time feeling guilty about a man who hasn't noticed you're unhappy. I don't know if I'm ready for that conversation yet. Then don't have it. Just be happy. You've earned it. There was more. Talk of weekend getaways, of Liam's plans to expand his business, of how much better Rachel looked since she'd started taking care of herself again. But I'd heard enough. I was still sitting there, phone in my hand, when someone knocked on my front door. Through the window, I could see Vivian Morse, Rachel's younger sister, pacing on my porch like a caged animal. Vivian was 35, recently divorced herself, and had never liked me much. She thought Rachel had settled when she married a mechanic instead of holding out for a lawyer or a doctor. But right now, she looked upset. Eddie, she said when I opened the door, we need to talk. If this is about Rachel, it's exactly about Rachel. Vivian pushed past me into the living room, her hands shaking as she pulled out her phone. I was at the club this morning. I saw something. She showed me a photo. Rachel and Liam Barrett, sitting close together on the club's outdoor deck. His hand was on her thigh. She was leaning into him, laughing at something he'd said. Her wedding ring was nowhere to be seen. There's more, Vivian said, swiping through her phone. They've been meeting there for weeks. Everyone knows Eddie. Everyone except you. The photos were damning. Rachel feeding Liam a bite of her breakfast, Liam's arm around her shoulders, the two of them walking toward the parking lot together, his hand on the small of her back. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Vivian's expression softened just a little. Because you're family, and because Rachel's making a fool of herself. This guy's bad news, Eddie. He was married when he moved here 2 years ago. His wife left him after she found out about his affairs. Plural. Affairs. So, I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing her to a serial cheater who'd probably dump her the minute someone younger came along. They're there now, Vivian said. If you want the truth, come with me. But Eddie, she grabbed my arm as I headed for my keys. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't do anything stupid. Rachel's not worth going to jail over. Maybe not. But she was worth fighting for. The Lakeview Country Club sat on the shore of Moose Lake, all weathered cedar and old money pretensions. It was the kind of place that charged $50 for a hamburger and acted like it was doing you a favor. I'd been there exactly 3 times in my life. Twice for work, fixing their kitchen equipment, and once for Rachel's company Christmas party. Today, I was there to watch my marriage die. Vivian parked her car near the back of the lot, behind a maintenance shed where we wouldn't be seen. Through the trees, we had a clear view of the outdoor deck where the club served weekend brunch. There, Vivian whispered, pointing. Rachel sat at a corner table wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, yellow with thin straps that showed off her shoulders. She looked beautiful and happy and like a complete stranger. Across from her, Liam Barrett leaned back in his chair, gesturing with his hands as he told some story that had Rachel covering her mouth to keep from laughing too loud. They looked like a couple, a real couple, the kind that finished each other's sentences and shared inside jokes. The kind Rachel and I used to be, before work and bills, and the slow erosion of 15 years wore us down to polite strangers. I'm going over there, I said. Eddie, no. Think about this. But I was already out of the car, walking across the parking lot with my hands clenched into fists. I wasn't sure what I was going to say or do, but I couldn't sit there watching anymore. I made it halfway across the deck before Rachel saw me. Her face went white, then red, then white again. She stood up so fast her chair almost tipped over. Eddie, what are you doing here? Having brunch with my wife, apparently. I looked at Liam, who was still sitting down, still smiling that easy smile that probably worked on every woman he met. Though I don't think we've been properly introduced, I'm Eddie Harlan, Rachel's husband. Liam stood up slowly, extending his hand like we were meeting at a business conference. Liam Barrett, Rachel's told me a lot about you. I'll bet she had. I looked at his offered hand but didn't take it. Eddie, please, Rachel said, glancing around at the other diners who were starting to stare. Can we talk about this at home? Talk about what? Your book club? Your girls' brunch? I gestured at the table set for 2. Funny, I don't see Steph or Nora or Candace anywhere. Rachel's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Liam, to his credit, didn't try to pretend this was innocent. Look, man, he said, this isn't how anyone wanted this to go down. How did you want it to go down? You'd keep screwing my wife behind my back until what? She worked up the courage to ask for a divorce? Or were you planning to just disappear when you got bored, like you did with your ex-wife? Liam's smile faltered. You don't know anything about my ex-wife. I know she was smart enough to leave you. Eddie, stop. Rachel grabbed my arm. People are staring. People were staring. The whole deck had gone quiet, everyone pretending to eat while they watched the show. I recognized some of them, Rachel's work friends, people from town, the kind of folks who'd be talking about this for weeks. Good. Let them talk. I pulled my arm free from Rachel's grip and looked at her. Really looked at her. How long? What? How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been coming here, playing house with this guy while I sit at home wondering what I did wrong? Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't sure if they were real or just for the audience. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me, Rachel. Help me understand. She looked at Liam like she was waiting for him to save her. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable for the first time since I'd arrived. I never meant for this to happen, Rachel said finally. But Eddie, we haven't been happy for a long time. You know that. I know I haven't been happy. I didn't know you decided to do something about it without telling me. What was I supposed to do? We barely talk anymore. We're like roommates. So you decided to find a new roommate? It's not about him, Rachel said, but she was looking at Liam when she said it. It's about us. About what we've become. What we'd become. Like it was something that had happened to us instead of something she'd chosen. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With a few taps, I found the recording from this morning and hit play. So, take off the ring, Steph's voice came through the speaker, tinny but clear. Stop pretending. Liam's crazy about you, and you're wasting time feeling guilty about a man who hasn't noticed you're unhappy. Rachel's face went dead white. Around us, people were leaning in, trying to hear better. Eddie's just small, Rachel's recorded voice continued. Small town, small dreams, small life. When I'm with Liam, I feel like I could be anyone. I stopped the recording and put my phone away. The deck was silent except for the sound of waves lapping against the shore. Small, I said. 15 years, and that's what it comes down to. Rachel was crying now. Real tears this time. Eddie, I'm sorry. I never meant for you to hear that. You meant every word of it. She didn't deny it. I looked at Liam, who was shifting from foot to foot like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. You want her? You can have her. I walked over to Rachel and held out my hand. For a second, she looked confused. Then she understood. Eddie, no. The ring, Rachel. Give me the ring. Please don't do this here. You did this here. Give me the ring. With shaking hands, she pulled her wedding ring from her purse and placed it in my palm. It was warm from being against her body, and for a crazy second, I wanted to put it back on her finger and pretend none of this had happened. Instead, I walked to the edge of the deck and threw it as hard as I could into the lake. The splash was small, barely audible, but it felt like the loudest sound I'd ever heard. When I turned around, Rachel was sobbing and Liam was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Congratulations, I told him. She's all yours. Then I walked away, leaving my wife crying on the deck of a country club, surrounded by strangers and the wreckage of our marriage. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The house felt different when I walked in, bigger and smaller at the same time, empty in a way it had never been, even when Rachel was at work. I sat in my kitchen and tried to figure out what came next. Divorce lawyers, I supposed, splitting up 15 years worth of accumulated stuff, telling people. God telling people. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Frankie Sullivan, who owned the Lake Effect, the bar where I'd spent most of my Friday nights since high school. I heard about the fireworks at the country club. You okay? News traveled fast in a town of 8,000 people. By tonight, everyone would know that Eddie Harlan had caught his wife cheating and made a scene. Some would feel sorry for me. Others would say I should have handled it better, been more mature about it. I texted back, been better. Drink later? I'll have a beer waiting. I was getting ready to head out when Rachel came home. I heard her car in the driveway, the slam of the door, her footsteps on the porch. She came into the kitchen looking like she'd been crying for hours. We need to talk, she said. I think we said everything at the club. Eddie, please, I know I handled this badly, but Badly? I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. You've been lying to me for months. You've been making me feel crazy for noticing that you'd checked out of our marriage. And when I finally caught you, your biggest concern was that people were staring. Rachel sat down across from me at the table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did it anyway. I was trying to figure things out. I thought maybe if I had some time to think, with him. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Liam and I, we just connected. He makes me feel alive again. And I make you feel what? Dead? Rachel looked down at her hands. Her ring finger had a pale band where her wedding ring used to be. You make me feel invisible, like I'm just part of the furniture. When's the last time you really looked at me, Eddie? When's the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about bills or schedules or what needs to be fixed around the house? She wasn't wrong, and that was the worst part. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being husband and wife and started being business partners in the corporation of daily life. But I'd been trying to fix that. The lobster rolls, the movie nights I'd suggested, I'd been trying. So you decided to fix it by screwing someone else? I decided to fix it by remembering who I used to be, before I became just Eddie Harlan's wife. Is that what you think you are? Just my wife? It's what I became. It's what this town made me. Rachel Harlan, the mechanic's wife, not Rachel Morse, the woman who had dreams and ambitions, and you kept your maiden name at work. At work, yes, but everywhere else, I'm just an extension of you. I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for half my adult life, and realized I didn't know her at all anymore. Maybe I never had. So what now? I asked. I don't know. I need time to think. More time? How much time do you need, Rachel? Because I'm pretty sure your boyfriend's not going to wait around while you figure out whether you want to be married or not. She flinched at the word boyfriend. Liam understands that this is complicated. I'm sure he does. He's had practice. Rachel stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm going to stay at Vivian's for a few days. Give us both some space to process this. Process this? Like our marriage was a business transaction gone wrong. Fine, I said. Take whatever you need. She went upstairs, and I heard her moving around, opening drawers, closing suitcase zippers. When she came back down, she was carrying a large bag and had changed into jeans and a sweater. Eddie, she said from the doorway, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. For getting caught. For all of it. For letting it get this far. For not having the courage to talk to you before it came to this. I wanted to say something cruel. Something that would hurt her the way she'd hurt me. But I was too tired and too empty to find the words. I'll call you in a few days, she said. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and tried to remember the last time Rachel and I had laughed together. Really laughed, not just polite chuckles at each other's small talk. I couldn't remember. Maybe she was right. Maybe we had become strangers. Maybe I had stopped seeing her as anything more than a familiar presence in my daily routine. But that didn't make what she'd done right, and it didn't mean I was going to make it easy for her. The lake effect was busy for a Tuesday night, but Frankie had saved me a spot at the end of the bar away from the crowd. He slid a beer across the bar without being asked and gave me the kind of look that said he'd heard all the details already. Rough day, he said. You could say that. Frankie O'Sullivan had been my best friend since we were 12 years old. He'd bought the lake effect 5 years ago when old Pete Kowalski decided to retire, and he'd turned it into the kind of place where working people could have a beer and a burger without feeling like they needed to dress up. It was my second home, the place I came to decompress after long days fixing other people's problems. Want to talk about it? Frankie asked. Not much to say. My wife's been cheating on me with the pretty boy who owns the gym. I found out, made a scene, and now she's staying at her sister's while she processes the situation. Liam Barrett, right? Guy's been in here a few times. Tips well, but there's something off about him. Off how? Too friendly, you know? Like he's running for office or something. And he's always checking his phone, texting, even when he's with people. I thought about that. He was married when he moved here. Yeah, I heard that story. Wife caught him with someone else and took him for everything in the divorce. He had to start over from scratch. And now he's working on my wife. Frankie refilled my beer without being asked. What are you going to do? Honestly, I have no idea. Part of me wants to fight for her. Part of me wants to let her go and see how long it takes for Mr. Wonderful to get bored and move on to the next married woman. And the other part? I took a long drink of my beer. The other part wants to make them both pay for humiliating me. Frankie nodded like that was the most reasonable thing he'd heard all day. Well, if you decide to go with option 3, you know I'm here for you. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I didn't say stupid. I said, make them pay. There's a difference. Before I could ask him what he meant, the front door opened, and Steph Morrison walked in with Nora Chen and Candace Williams, Rachel's divorce club, looking like they owned the place. They saw me immediately and huddled together, whispering. Then Steph broke away from the group and walked over to the bar. Eddie, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I heard about what happened today. I'm so sorry. Steph was 42, blonde, and had been bitter about men ever since her husband left her for a woman 10 years younger. She wore her divorce like a badge of honor and seemed to take personal satisfaction in watching other marriages fall apart. Are you? I asked. Of course I am. Nobody wants to see a marriage end. Really? Because from what I heard, you've been encouraging Rachel to leave me for months. Steph's expression shifted, the fake sympathy replaced by something harder. Rachel's my friend. I want her to be happy. Even if it means breaking up a 15-year marriage? Even if it means getting out of a marriage that stopped working a long time ago? Frankie was watching this exchange with interest, polishing glasses with more attention than they required. Around us, the bar had gotten quieter as people tuned into the drama. You don't know anything about my marriage, I said. I know Rachel's been miserable for years. I know she's been trying to make it work with a man who doesn't appreciate what he has. And you know this how? Because she tells me, because I listen to her, because I'm her friend. You're not her friend, Steph. You're a misery vampire. You feed off other people's problems because it makes you feel better about your own life falling apart. The bar went dead silent. Steph's face turned red, then white. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? You've been working on Rachel for months, haven't you? Filling her head with stories about how much better life is when you're single? Introducing her to Liam? Encouraging her to take off her wedding ring? Rachel makes her own decisions. With a lot of help from you and your bitter divorcee club over there. I nodded toward Nora and Candace, who were pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. You're pathetic, Steph said. No wonder Rachel found someone else. That's when I snapped. I stood up from my bar stool and Steph took a step back. I'm not a big guy, but 15 years of physical work had given me the kind of strength that comes from actually using your hands for a living. Let me tell you something, I said, my voice low and steady. You destroyed your own marriage with your selfishness and your need to always be right about everything. And now you're trying to destroy mine because you can't stand the thought of anyone else being happy. That's not true. It is true. And deep down you know it. That's why you're so angry all the time. That's why you can't just leave people alone and let them work their problems out. Steph looked around the bar, maybe hoping someone would come to her defense. But this was a working-class place, full of people who'd been married for decades and worked hard to keep their relationships together. They didn't have much sympathy for someone who made a hobby out of breaking up marriages. You're going to regret this, Steph said finally. I already regret it. I regret not telling you to stay away from my wife months ago. Steph turned and walked back to her friends, who gathered around her like she was wounded in battle. They left a few minutes later, but not before glaring at me with looks that promised this wasn't over. Well, Frankie said after they were gone, that was interesting. I probably shouldn't have said all that. Probably not, but it needed saying. He leaned across the bar. You know they're going to make trouble for you now, right? I finished my beer and left money on the bar. Let them try. But as I drove home to my empty house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made things a lot worse for myself. I was wrong about things getting worse. They got catastrophic. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Half were from people I barely knew, asking if it was true that I'd threatened Steph Morrison at the Lake Effect. The other half were from potential customers canceling appointments. Apparently, Steph had been busy. According to the story making the rounds, I'd cornered her at the bar, called her names, and made threatening gestures. Some versions had me grabbing her arm. Others had me throwing a beer bottle. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter in a town this size. What mattered was the story, and Steph was a better storyteller than I was. My phone rang. Officer Tara Stokes, someone I'd known since high school. Eddie, I need to ask you about what happened at the Lake Effect last night. Let me guess. Steph Morrison filed a complaint. She did. Says you threatened her, made her feel unsafe. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tara, you've known me for 25 years. When have I ever threatened a woman? Never. That's why I'm calling instead of showing up at your door with handcuffs. But Eddie, you need to be smart about this. Stay away from Steph and her friends. Don't give them any ammunition. What about what she's been doing to my marriage? That's not illegal. Being a lousy friend is not against the law. After Tara hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to figure out how my life had turned into a soap opera. 3 days ago, my biggest problem was a suspicious wife. Now, I was the town villain, accused of threatening women and losing customers because of gossip and lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Heard about last night. This isn't helping anything. I texted back, neither is sleeping with another man, but here we are. She didn't respond. By noon, I'd lost 3 more customers. By evening, Vivian was at my door again, looking like she had more bad news to deliver. They're planning something, she said without preamble. Who's planning what? Steph and her crew. I was at the grocery store this morning and I overheard them talking. They want to make sure you get what you deserve for embarrassing them. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know exactly, but Vivian, they're angry and they have connections. Steph's ex-husband is a lawyer. Nora works at the bank where you have your business account. Candace knows everyone in town. I invited her in and made coffee while she told me what she'd overheard. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me nervous. These women had decided I was the enemy, and they were organizing against me. There's something else, Vivian said. About Rachel. I don't want to hear it. You need to hear it. She's not staying at my place anymore. She moved in with Liam 3 days ago. The coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. What? She didn't tell you? Eddie, they're living together, playing house like there's some kind of fairy tale couple. 3 days. Rachel had been gone for 3 days, and she was already living with another man. I'm sorry, Vivian said. I know this is hard. Why are you telling me this? I thought you were on Rachel's side. Vivian looked uncomfortable. I love my sister, but she's making a mistake. Liam Barrett is bad news. He's using her, and she can't see it. So why don't you tell her that? I tried. She told me to mind my own business. Said I was jealous because my marriage didn't work out. I set down my coffee cup and looked at Vivian. Really looked at her. She was younger than Rachel. Prettier in an obvious way, but there was something desperate about her that men seemed to pick up on. Her divorce had been ugly, and she'd been alone for 2 years now. What do you want from me, Vivian? I want to help you get her back. Why? Because you're good for her. You're stable and honest, and you love her. Liam's going to break her heart, and when he does, she's going to need someone to pick up the pieces. And you think that should be me? I think you're the only one who can save her from making the biggest mistake of her life. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that Rachel was just confused, that she'd come to her senses and realize what she was throwing away. But the truth was harder to swallow. Rachel wasn't confused. She was happy. For the first time in years, she was doing exactly what she wanted to do, and she didn't care who got hurt in the process. What did you have in mind? I asked. Vivian smiled, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone. I have some ideas, she said. But first, we need to deal with Steph Morrison and her friends. They're going to keep making trouble for you until you make it clear that you're not going to be their victim. I'm not going to threaten anyone. You don't have to threaten them. You just have to remind them that you know things about them too. Things they wouldn't want getting around town. What kind of things? Vivian's smile got wider. The kind of things people tell bartenders when they've had too much to drink. The kind of things they put in text messages they think are private. The kind of things that could make their lives very uncomfortable if the right people found out. I stared at her. You want me to blackmail them? I want you to level the playing field. They're using gossip and lies to destroy your reputation. Why shouldn't you return the favor? Because it was wrong. Because it would make me as bad as they were. Because it wasn't who I wanted to be. But as I sat there in my empty house, thinking about Rachel living with another man and my business falling apart because of lies, I realized that being the good guy wasn't working out so well for me. What do you know? I asked. Vivian pulled out her phone and started scrolling through text messages. Where do you want me to start? The plan was simple, and that's what made it beautiful. No grand gestures, no dramatic confrontations, just the strategic application of truth at exactly the right moment. Vivian, it turned out, was a gold mine of information. 2 years of divorce support groups, girls' nights, and too much wine had given her access to secrets that could destroy reputations in a town like ours. Steph Morrison, the ringleader of the Bitter Wives Club, had been skimming money from the charity fundraiser she organized every year. Not much, a few $100s here and there, but enough to pay for her expensive highlights and weekend trips to Portland. Nora Chen, who worked at First National Bank, had been sharing confidential customer information with her friends during their weekly gossip sessions, a clear violation of federal banking laws. And Candace Williams, who presented herself as the perfect single mother, had been leaving her 12-year-old daughter alone overnight while she went on dates with married men she met online. "How do you know all this?" I asked Vivian as she laid out the evidence on my kitchen table. "Because they trust me. Because I'm the good sister, the one who listens and doesn't judge. They tell me things they'd never tell anyone else." "And you've been saving it all?" "I've been protecting myself, in case I ever needed leverage." I looked at the screenshots, the photos, the documented evidence of 3 women who'd built their lives on judging others while hiding their own sins. It was enough to destroy all of them. "This feels wrong," I said. "What feels wrong is letting them destroy your life while they pretend to be victims," Vivian replied. "What feels wrong is watching my sister throw away 15 years of marriage for a man who's going to break her heart." "And this is going to help Rachel how?" "It's going to show her what kind of people she's been listening to. When she sees what her new friends are really like, maybe she'll start questioning their advice about everything else." Maybe. Or maybe it would just make everything worse. But I was tired of being the victim. Tired of watching my life fall apart while everyone else played games. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing dramatic. Just make sure the right information gets to the right people. Let the truth do the work." The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Janet Morrison, Steph's ex-husband's new wife, who happened to run the charity that Steph had been stealing from. I sent her copies of bank statements and receipts that showed a pattern of missing funds. The second was to the compliance department at First National Bank, along with recorded conversations of Nora discussing customers' personal, financial information. The third was to the Department of Children and Family Services, with documentation of Candace leaving her minor daughter unsupervised overnight. Then I sat back and waited. I didn't have to wait long. By noon, Steph Morrison was at the bank, trying to explain why the charity's account was short $3,000. By 2 o'clock, Nora Chen was in her supervisor's office, facing termination and possible federal charges. By evening, Candace Williams was dealing with a visit from social services and the very real possibility of losing custody of her daughter. My phone started ringing around 6. Steph, screaming about how I'd destroyed her life. Nora, crying and begging me to call the bank and tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Candace, threatening to have me arrested for harassment. I let them all go to voicemail. The real test came the next day, when Rachel showed up at my house. She looked tired and angry and nothing like the happy woman I'd seen at the country club. "What did you do?" she asked. I told the truth. "You destroyed 3 people's lives." "They destroyed their own lives. I just made sure the right people found out about it." Rachel sat down at our kitchen table, in the same chair where she'd told me she needed time to think. "This isn't you, Eddie. This isn't who you are. Maybe it's who I need to be. They're saying you're dangerous, vindictive, that you can't be trusted. Who's saying that? Your boyfriend?" She flinched. "Liam thinks you're having some kind of breakdown." "Liam thinks a lot of things, most of them wrong." Rachel looked around the kitchen, at the coffee cups in the sink, the mail piled on the counter, the small signs of a life being lived alone. "I came here to ask you to stop, to leave my friends alone and let us all move on." "Your friends? Rachel, these people convinced you to destroy our marriage. They fed you lies about how much better your life would be without me, and now you're finding out what kind of people they really are. That doesn't give you the right to ruin their lives. And it didn't give them the right to ruin mine." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the street, the normal sounds of a neighborhood where people still believed in things like marriage and commitment and working through problems instead of running away from them. "I want a divorce," Rachel said finally. I'd been expecting it, but hearing the words still felt like a punch to the gut. "Because of what I did to your friends? Because of what you've become. The Eddie I married wouldn't have done this. He wouldn't have hurt people just to get revenge. The Rachel I married wouldn't have cheated on me with a man she barely knew." "I know. And I'm sorry for that, but Eddie, this has to stop. The anger, the revenge, it's eating you alive. She was right. I could feel it, the bitterness growing inside me like a cancer. But I couldn't stop. Not when I was so close to making them all pay for what they'd done. I'll file the papers next week, Rachel said, standing up. I'll be fair about the division of assets. You can keep the house. How generous. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been not cheating on me in the first place. Rachel walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I really did love you. I still do, in a way. Just not enough. Not in the right way. Not anymore. After she left, I sat in my empty house and tried to feel something other than rage. Sadness, maybe. Regret. Loss. But all I could think about was Liam Barrett. Probably comforting my wife right now, telling her everything would be okay, that she was better off without her vindictive ex-husband. I pulled out my phone and called Vivian. It's not over, I said when she answered. What do you mean? Rachel wants a divorce. She's choosing him. I'm sorry, Eddie. I really thought I'm not done. If she wants to throw away 15 years for a guy like Barrett, then she deserves to know exactly who she's choosing. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to do some research on Mr. Perfect. Find out what he doesn't want people to know. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then, I might know someone who can help with that. Who? Barrett's ex-wife. She lives in Boston now, but I have her contact information. She might be very interested in talking about her ex-husband. I smiled for the first time in days. Set up a meeting. Eddie, are you sure about this? Once you go down this road, I'm already on this road. I might as well see where it leads. Barrett's ex-wife turned out to be a woman named Jennifer Walsh, a successful real estate agent who'd rebuilt her life after her marriage imploded. We met at a coffee shop in Portland, an hour's drive from my small town, and the gossip that followed me everywhere. Jennifer was attractive in a sharp, professional way, with the kind of confidence that came from surviving something terrible and coming out stronger. She looked nothing like Rachel. Blonde, where my wife was dark, tall, where Rachel was petite, polished, where Rachel was naturally beautiful. So you're the husband, she said when I introduced myself. You heard about that? Liam called me last week. Wanted to know if I'd been talking to anyone about our marriage. Seemed nervous. She ordered a latte and settled back in her chair, studying me with intelligent green eyes. He should be nervous, she continued. There's a lot to talk about. Over the next hour, Jennifer Walsh painted a picture of Liam Barrett that was very different from the charming gym owner who'd stolen my wife. The real Liam was a serial cheater who specialized in married women. He'd had at least 5 affairs during their 7-year marriage. Always with women who were unhappy in their relationships, always with the same pattern. He's very good at reading people, Jennifer explained. He can spot an unhappy wife from across a room. He knows exactly what to say, how to make them feel special and understood. He makes them believe their husbands don't appreciate them. Sounds familiar. I'm sure it does. The thing is, Liam doesn't actually want to be with these women long term. He likes the chase, the drama, the feeling of taking something that belongs to someone else. Once he has them, once they leave their husbands for him, he gets bored. How long does it usually take? 6 months, maybe 8. Just long enough for them to burn all their bridges. Jennifer reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. I've been documenting his pattern for 2 years now. Partly for my own closure, partly because I knew someday it would be useful. The folder contained photographs, text messages, social media posts, and detailed timelines of Liam's relationships since their divorce. 3 women in Boston, 2 in Portland, and now Rachel. All married when he met them, all divorced within months of getting involved with him, all discarded when he moved on to the next conquest. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I like you. Because you remind me of my second husband, a good man who deserves better than what he's getting, and because I want to see Liam Barrett get what's coming to him. What's that? Public humiliation. The one thing he can't charm his way out of. Jennifer's plan was elegant in its simplicity. She'd been in contact with the other women Liam had used and discarded. They were all angry, all eager for revenge, and all willing to come forward if it meant stopping him from hurting someone else. We're going to expose him, Jennifer said. All of us together. Show the world exactly what kind of man he really is. How? Social media. A coordinated campaign. Photos, messages, testimonials from his victims. We'll make him famous for all the wrong reasons. It was tempting. God, it was tempting, but something held me back. What about Rachel? This will destroy her too. Rachel made her choice. She chose to believe a liar over her own husband. She chose to throw away 15 years of marriage for a man she barely knew. Maybe it's time she faced the consequences. Maybe it was. But as I sat there looking at the evidence of Liam Barrett's pattern of destruction, I realized something had changed in me. The rage was still there, but it was tempered now by something else. Pity, maybe. Or just exhaustion. "I need to think about this," I said. Jennifer nodded and slid the folder across the table. "Keep this. Look through it. When you're ready to make him pay, call me." I drove home with the folder on my passenger seat, feeling the weight of all those secrets, all that ammunition. I could destroy Liam Barrett with a few phone calls and some strategic social media posts. I could humiliate him the way he'd humiliated me. But what would that make me? I was still wrestling with that question when I got home and found Rachel's car in my driveway. She was sitting on the front porch steps crying. Not the pretty tears she'd shed at the country club, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. "Rachel, what's wrong?" She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "He's gone." "Who's gone?" "Liam. He left, packed up his apartment, closed his gym, just disappeared." I sat down beside her on the steps, the folder still in my hands. "When?" "This morning. I went to work, and when I came home, there was a note. He said he'd gotten a better opportunity in California, said it was too good to pass up." "Did he ask you to go with him?" Rachel laughed bitterly. "No, he said it was better if we made a clean break, that we both needed to find ourselves or some BS like that." So Jennifer had been right. 6 months, maybe 8. Rachel hadn't even gotten that long. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Are you? Because I wouldn't blame you if you weren't." I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, sitting there broken and abandoned, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just sadness for both of us. "I never wanted you to get hurt," I said. "Even after everything I did to you? Even then?" Rachel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I was so stupid, Eddie. I threw away everything we had for a man who didn't even have the decency to say goodbye in person." "You weren't stupid. You were unhappy, and he was good at taking advantage of that. How can you be so understanding? I destroyed our marriage. I humiliated you in front of the whole town. I chose him over you, and he didn't even want me." I thought about the folder in my hands, about Jennifer Walsh and her plan for revenge, about all the ways I could make Rachel feel even worse about her choices. Instead, I set the folder aside and put my arm around my wife's shoulders. "Because I love you," I said, "and because we both made mistakes." We sat there on the porch as the sun set, two people who'd lost their way trying to figure out how to find it again. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't reconciliation. Too much had been broken for that, but it was something. A beginning, maybe. Or an ending that didn't have to be cruel. The next morning, I called Jennifer Walsh and told her I wouldn't be needing her help after all. Then I took the folder full of Liam Barrett's secrets and burned it in my backyard fire pit. Some revenge, I realized, wasn't worth the cost. But that didn't mean I was done. Because while Rachel had been crying on my porch, I'd been thinking. And I'd realized that there was one more person who needed to face the consequences of their actions. Not Liam Barrett, who was already gone. Not Rachel, who was already suffering. But the person who'd started all of this. The person who'd poisoned my wife against me and encouraged her to throw away our marriage. Steph Morrison thought she'd won when she turned the town against me. She thought she'd gotten away with destroying my reputation while hiding her own sins. She was wrong, and tomorrow, she was going to find out just how wrong she'd been. The Moose Lake Fall Festival was the biggest event of the year in our town, drawing visitors from 3 counties for craft booths, live music, and the kind of small-town charm that people from the city paid good money to experience. Everyone would be there. Families, couples, teenagers on dates, and the local gossips who treated community events like their personal soap opera. It was the perfect stage for what I had planned. I'd spent the week since Rachel's breakdown putting the pieces together. Not revenge, exactly, but something more like justice. A reckoning for the woman who'd made it her mission to destroy marriages while hiding behind a mask of friendship and concern. Steph Morrison had survived the charity scandal. Barely. The missing money had been explained away as accounting errors, and she'd managed to keep her position as head of the fundraising committee. She was still walking around town like she was the victim, telling anyone who'd listen about how I'd tried to frame her out of spite. But I knew something she didn't know I knew. Something that would change everything. The festival was in full swing when I arrived Saturday afternoon. The town square was packed with families enjoying the last warm weekend before winter set in. I found Frankie running the beer booth for the lake effect and bought a cup while I scanned the crowd. "You're looking awfully calm for someone who's been the town pariah for the past month," Frankie said. "Things have a way of working themselves out." "Rachel back home yet?" "No, we're getting divorced. It's amicable." Frankie raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He'd known me long enough to recognize when I had something planned. I spotted Steph Morrison near the bandstand, holding court with a group of women I didn't recognize. Probably visitors from out of town who didn't know the local drama. She was wearing a bright red dress and laughing too loudly, playing the role of the vivacious divorcee who'd overcome adversity through strength and determination. Perfect. I walked over to the festival's main stage, where local politicians and community leaders took turns making announcements and thanking sponsors. The microphone was open to anyone who wanted to address the crowd. "Excuse me," I said to the volunteer managing the schedule. "I'd like to make an announcement." "What kind of announcement?" "Community service, thanking someone who's made a real difference in our town." The volunteer, an elderly woman I recognized from church, smiled and added my name to the list. "You'll be up in about 10 minutes, right after Mayor Peterson finishes his speech." I spent those 10 minutes walking through the crowd, making sure I had everyone's attention. Word spread quickly in a small town. Eddie Harlan was going to speak at the festival. The same Eddie Harlan who'd been accused of threatening women, who'd caused scenes at the country club and the lake effect, who'd been the subject of gossip for weeks. People were curious. They gathered around the stage, some hoping for drama, others just wanting to see what the town's most controversial resident had to say for himself. When my turn came, I walked up to the microphone and looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces, some friendly, some hostile, most just curious. I found Steph Morrison in the crowd, still surrounded by her admirers, still playing her role. "Good afternoon," I said, and my voice carried clearly across the square. "My name is Eddie Harlan, and I want to talk to you about friendship." A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't what they'd been expecting. "A month ago, my marriage ended," I continued. "My wife left me for another man. It was painful and humiliating, and I handled it badly. I said things I shouldn't have said, did things I shouldn't have done. I let my anger turn me into someone I didn't recognize." I could see people relaxing slightly. This sounded like an apology, a public act of contrition from a man who'd lost his way. But I learned something important during this difficult time. I learned about the power of friendship, about how the people we trust can shape our decisions, influence our choices, and ultimately determine the direction of our lives. I paused and looked directly at Steph Morrison. Her smile was starting to fade. I learned that some people call themselves friends while working to destroy the very thing they claim to want to protect. They offer support while spreading poison. They provide comfort while encouraging destruction. The crowd was getting restless now, sensing that this wasn't going to be the simple apology they'd expected. My wife had a friend like that, someone who convinced her that her marriage was hopeless, that her husband didn't appreciate her, that she deserved better, someone who introduced her to other men and encouraged her to take off her wedding ring, someone who made breaking up a 15-year marriage seem like an act of liberation. Steph Morrison was backing away from the stage now, trying to disappear into the crowd. But people were looking at her, recognizing her, remembering the rumors about her role in the Harlan marriage drama. "That friend is here today," I said. "She's probably feeling pretty proud of herself. After all, she succeeded. She destroyed my marriage. She turned my wife against me. She convinced a good woman to throw away everything she'd built for a man who abandoned her the moment things got complicated." "Eddie, that's enough." Officer Tara Stokes was pushing through the crowd toward the stage. But I wasn't done. What this friend didn't know is that I've been doing some research, learning about her own marriage, her own choices, her own secrets. I pulled out my phone and held it up so the crowd could see. "Did you know that Stephanie Morrison's husband didn't leave her for another woman? He left her because he found out she was stealing money from their joint accounts to pay for gambling debts. Did you know she's been attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings in Portland for 2 years? Did you know she owes over $40,000 to various creditors and has been using her position with local charities to skim money to pay her debts? The crowd went dead silent. All eyes turned to Steph Morrison, who was standing frozen in the middle of the square, her face white with shock and rage. "That's a lie!" she screamed. "He's making it up!" "Am I?" I held up a folder thick with documents. "Because I have bank statements, credit reports, and testimony from 3 people who've personally seen how out of control your gambling has gotten, including your ex-husband, who is very interested to learn that you've been telling people he cheated on you." Steph pushed through the crowd toward the stage, her carefully constructed image crumbling with every step. "You bastard, you can't do this!" "I can do exactly this, because everything I just said is true, and because you destroyed my marriage with lies, I thought it was time for people to hear the truth about you." Officer Stokes reached the stage and grabbed my arm. "Eddie, you need to stop this now." "I'm done," I said, stepping away from the microphone. But the damage was complete. Steph Morrison stood in the middle of the town square, exposed and humiliated, while hundreds of people stared at her with a mixture of shock and disgust. The woman who'd made a career out of destroying other people's relationships had finally been revealed for what she really was. As Tara escorted me away from the stage, I could hear the crowd buzzing with excitement. By tomorrow, everyone in 3 counties would know the truth about Stephanie Morrison. Her reputation was finished. Her influence was gone. Her ability to poison other marriages was over. It wasn't revenge, exactly. It was justice. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe again.